Hey everybody, this is Damien with Rosieside Farm. Time for another one of our market farm updates. Been a little while since I've done one. There's a lot of growth here in the garden. It is June 9th, 2023. We've got the ducks providing a little sound for us. So this is our squash, zucchini, and tomatillo row. And I said before, like the squash and zucchini are really just for our own consumption. I didn't want to put them too close together, so I put tomatillos in between them, with the thought that the tomatillos are going to grow up before the squash and zucchini grow out and smother them. And it's going pretty good so far. Tomatillos have pretty good growth. We're in partial shade right here. We have a tree that gives partial shade to this part of the garden. You can see where they get full sunlight. They've taken off a little bit better, but all are doing pretty well. We come to our line of tomatoes, our Carolina Golds, our pineapples, celebrity, beefsteak, just a lot of different varieties. We've got the trellis up. They're not quite high enough yet to reach the trellis to start tying off, but we are getting tomatoes down here. And this was not the first succession of tomatoes that we had. These came afterwards, and we had some volunteer ground cherries that we grew last year in this area, so they found themselves a hole, found themselves a way to live, so we're going to let them live right where they decided to. But pretty good growth here on, I believe it's the third succession of tomatoes that we planted. Over to our first row of tomatoes and peppers, and we had a volunteer tomato from last year start growing, so it's going to stay right there. We've lost a couple of peppers. Didn't really grow very well. I guess they're not lost yet, but they're not looking good. But for the most part, the peppers are doing well. Now, these last, I don't know, 5 or 6 tomatoes are white tomatoes, variety we've never grown before. Oh, and I just see a bee there on the flower. It's good to see. And they tend to have a lot of leaf curl. Looking all right now. I just watered. Just put our drip irrigation in, I don't know, about a week ago. They tend to curl a little bit more than the beefsteaks, Carolina Gold, celebrities, all the other stuff we have, the black crims. But our beefsteaks, I mean, we're doing well. We've got, I don't know if you can see, we've got tomatoes on the vine. Our line of peppers right next to our tomatoes. And I've started tying them up on the trellis, at least a little bit a day. But, I mean, tying them up's a lot of work when you have, I don't know, close to 90 tomato plants in the ground. So I try to come out and do, 10 or 15 every time I'm out here. Just start tying them up to hopefully keep them under control. Another look at our peppers. And then next to our peppers, we have our small row of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 eggplant. I believe they're black beauties and then white eggplant at the end. And now our second line of tomatoes. Here's our drip irrigation setup. Our second line of tomatoes, again, in the tomato cages, because I have them, not because it's my preferred method of trellising them up, but if I have them, I'm using them. And we have tomatoes on the vine. Moving on over to our bamboo trellised tomatoes, again, growing pretty well. And our big fat red tomatoes are fat red tomatoes that we don't know exactly what they are. Started out very small, and they're actually putting on tomatoes as well. So our third succession of tomatoes, and they're all the same varieties. We have some pretty good clumps here of tomatoes growing. And again, we had the trellis. I raised the trellis a little bit to just maximize the size of it, but they're not up high enough yet to tie off. Here we have our tiny gold, they're called spoon tomatoes, and it's our first time growing them, and they seem to be like a bushing type tomato. So they're under the trellis because I didn't know that, but they're bushing out. They're growing more out than they're growing up. So that's something to remember for next year. Oh, I got a good look at a pepper. We got a decent sized pepper over there on the plant. And just more of our tomato growth into our line of Lady Bells, which are doing pretty well. Starting to see little peppers on the plants. And our trellis, one of our trellis of cucumbers, I'm starting to train them into the trellis so they start growing where I want them to grow. Here's one of our Lady Bell peppers with a pepper on it. So over here, this was the insane collection of weeds, like massive, massive weeds. So I had to weed all that to put down the drip irrigation. As they were weeding, I put some cardboard down for where the plastic didn't match up to kill those weeds. We have some volunteers of some heirloom tomatoes from last year, and even the volunteers are putting on fruit for us. Just a back look at our tomato pepper growth. Over in this section, we have our trellis with our second trellis of cucumbers. And there are volunteer tomatoes around the cucumbers. I know you're not supposed to plant them together. They kind of compete against each other, but I'm a sucker for volunteers. So if you volunteer, I'm gonna put you to work. And what I did is surrounded the cucumbers with marigolds that my wife had for her flower garden that we're not putting into immediate use. And I actually just planted some bushing beans, some green bushing beans down this line that are not up yet. Again, some more tomatoes into our section of tomatillos that are taking off. I mean, they are really taking off, putting on tons of flowers, tons of growth. Into our not so hot section of white eggplant. I believe that's an okra right there. So it's a combination of white eggplant and okra. I tried to do that I thought I was a little more organized than that when I put it in, but apparently not. And our okra patch. And again, the okra is really starting to take off and looking good. So that's our update. Things are starting to get exciting. We're starting to actually see fruit on the vine, starting to see those vegetables, those peppers and those tomatoes coming in. Getting a little nervous about the cucumbers. I'd like to see cucumbers start coming in. We've planted some, have some succession planting with cucumbers. We haven't planted throughout the farm and other places too, but I think I'm gonna have to get some more plants in the ground just to give myself a safety plan in case those cucumber plants don't take off. Now what we do in our garden here is we spray with BT to stop the vine borers in the cucumbers, zucchini, and squash. That's all we spray here. So it's all just rabbit manure, sifted compost, and now our drip irrigation system to get everything going. So thanks for checking us out. We're gonna do another update next week, and we'll see how the garden is going. It's almost time to sell some vegetables.